All right, guys, so here's the video for how to make your monster dance. So it's the same file we had before where I was showing you how to work the controls. So we have our dope sheet here on the bottom, and then we have our timeline here on the very bottom to play any animation. And if we go to the animation tab over here, it's probably on dope sheet. So just switch it to the action editor. You don't even have to do that. You can do it from the original tab, but I guess I'm used to it. Go to the action editor. Now, we have probably this one here, which is the actual dance, where he's dancing around. And we're not going to use that, though, because I did that. You're going to do it. So we're going to turn this off, and you're going to make a new action, and you'll call this Dance 1. Okay, so now that I have that, I have sort of a blank canvas. I press A, and I press Q, and that resets all the controls to their default position so you can actually, like animate. Okay, so that's what you should have, just the regular tab. And you should have your dope sheet here, and you should have your timeline. And we're really going to do pretty much most of the work here. We're only going to go to the graph editor if necessary, and not much. Okay, so here we have our rig, as usual. Remember that our show overlays is on. It has to be on, otherwise you won't know what you're doing. Okay, so before we animate, we got to have some reference. We got to know what we're actually animating. So we're going to bring the video that I posted, and we're going to bring it into Blender so we can use it as reference. So let's say you can stay in your regular layout tab if you want, and go to the side where you see the little square, and then pull this aside. And now you're going to have another little window. And it's going to be the same guy, but that's not what we want. Go here, and you have something called Movie Clip Editor. And if I click that, there's a bunch of stuff, and what we're going to do is open up an actual clip. If I press open here, and I go to wherever you have downloaded your monster dance reference, because it's going to be on Classroom. So let's say I have it downloaded here, and I open the clip, and all of this stuff I don't need, so I'm going to press N. Oh, N there, and I'm just going to get rid of this. And there I have a dancing monster clip. And if I go back to the beginning, I can use the actual timeline controls to play the video. Tick, doo, doo. So before anything, since this video is a loop of 96 frames, 97 frames, go and make the end point at 96 so that it will loop properly. So set your timeline to end at 96 so we can actually watch this clip. And what we're going to be doing is analyzing the clip first. So what I'm going to ask you to do right now, take your notebooks, take a pencil right now, and what you're going to do is you're going to watch this video. Go download the video, and you're going to watch it very carefully over and over again. And what I want you to try to pay attention to is, first of all, I want you to break down the basic actions. How many basic actions is this monster doing in his little dance? And I want you to identify areas that are like repeated. So if he does the same thing a couple times, you can say, okay, that's sort of a repeated little move. And then he does another thing a bunch of times. Okay, that's a second little repeated move. So I want you to try to pay attention to what the monster is actually doing in this video. And because this is what you have to do every time you animate something, you have to first look at the actual reference of what you want to do and really look at it carefully and try to analyze it. So right now our analysis is how many basic movements is this little monster guy doing? And then I want you to figure out, after you've written down the movements, at what times is he doing it? So I want you to write down how many seconds it takes him to do this and how many seconds it takes him to do that and all that stuff. Okay. Pause the video, go get yourself some juice, watch this video clip, and write down your notes, and then come back after you have some notes. Bye. All right, welcome back. Enjoy the juice. I hope the juice was good. All right, so hopefully you've analyzed this little monster guy, and now I'm going to do it with you. So we have him doing his little dance. Let's watch it. Oh. Okay. So, as we can see, our little monster guy is doing sort of like a disco dance, 70s disco dance, okay? Starts off here, has arms up, and he flips it around, does the other arm up, then he flips it around again, and then he flips around again. So basically, he does a little disco dance. And that disco dance takes him about 2 seconds, about 48 frames to do the disco dance. Let's just watch it again. Oh, from the very beginning. He's already in that position, so it's like 1, 2, 3, 4. And now he changes. So at first he does this kind of like movement of arm up, left arm, right arm, left arm, right arm. So he does the whole thing twice. And basically, if you notice, it's a loop. He does this, and then that, and then he does the same thing again. That, and then that. So he does the same disco move twice in a row. Now, there's a couple little things happening. He's blinking and stuff like that. But the main thing is he's doing this little disco dance with his arm up and his hip out. And he's starting off on this side. His left arm's way up. His hip is kind of twisted like that. So his right hip is sticking up. And then he switches kind of fast. Now his other arm's up and his other hip's out. Then he switches again. He switches again. So the same move basically cycled twice. After he's done his little disco move, then he kind of chills out. There's a little groove going on. He gets down, his eyes close, and he kind of does a little kind of butt wiggle thing going on. Slack, slack, slack. And then he jumps up and gets back into the position. So basically the move is disco move twice on each side. Then he kind of scoots down, does his little groovy butt move, and he really does it. Let's look at that. 1, 2, 3, and then he starts to get ready to jump up again. And now he jumps up, kind of on the fourth one, he jumps up, and he gets ready to go back into the original position to his disco move. So let's watch it here. Disco, 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 groove, 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 jump, and then repeating. Groove, jump, disco, 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 jump. So you can think of it like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. Okay, so now that we know that we're doing, let's see how long this all takes. The first chunk of it, each of those moves takes basically a second. So that cycle starts off here, there, there. It takes a second. It takes 24 frames. It starts off at 1 and ends up at frame 25. So it's 1 second. Then he does it again. Same exact thing. Another second. And you kind of have to get your calculators to do this because the fact that everything is timed, you need to be able to add frames. So if that first second ends at frame 24 and it restarts at 25, now at frame 25, you have another second, which is 25 plus 24, which is 49. So at 49, now it's the next part. So basically 1 second goes up until here, and then the second second goes up until there. Now by the time it's the third second, or the third second, he is down, he's starting to get down into his little butt wiggle thing. So right there, that's the first position for his little groovy butt wiggle. So he starts off, and now his hip is up. And it's actually, look at the hip here. This is the beginning of the third second. The hip position is kind of similar to the very beginning, but he's a little bit lower. See there, his hip is up really high, and his other leg is kind of bent. Here, his hip is still higher here, and his leg's bent, but he's a little lower to the ground. He's kind of squatting a little bit. And his whole body is kind of turned a little bit. He's facing sort of that way, not exactly straight. And of course, his eyes are closed, as you see, because he's really enjoying it. And his mouth is open. He's like having a good time. So this is the beginning of the second part of the move. So butt wiggle, butt wiggle, butt wiggle. And then he's going to start to get ready to kind of scooch down and jump up. And now he's into the position to start his disco moves again. All right, let's start this. How are we actually going to do this? Okay, so we have our guy here. We're going to go into pose mode. Now, in previous videos, I just showed you open this and you go to like this to pose mode. But there's a shortcut, kids. And so I click on the ring and I write Control first and then Tab. Not at the same time, Control then Tab. And that gets me right away into pose mode. So if I do it again, Control and Tab, I get to object mode, Control and Tab into pose mode. You hold down Control first and then hit the Tab. Okay, animation is basically two things: posing and timing. Posing means the actual position of the body, like the pose, right? So the poses have to look good in each separate keyframe. But then we have to think about the timing. How do you get from one position to the other? So let's first think about just the posing. We have the first pose here. and he's in his original pose. Now, as I said before, his left arm is way up like this. His right arm is down, and if you see carefully, if you look carefully, his right arm is also back, kind of towards his butt. And his head is a little bit tilted to his right, and his eyes are kind of medium open. So we have to do all this. We have to do all this in our model. Before we do anything, though, let's make sure that we are in the right action. So let me just make sure, if I go to my action editor, dance 1. Perfect. We are in the right action. Let's keep going. All right. So now I'm basically going to match this puppet to our reference. So since there's a million bones here, and I said before that it's often overwhelming, remember I have these sets. If I go to the selection sets, here, this is the guy running. You pretty much keep it on the guy running. Go to selection sets, open this up, click where it says basic bones, and press select. And that just selects the basic bones, which are the hands, the torso, the hips, and the legs, which is a good starting point. Okay, so we're going to set his initial position. When I look at this, the most obvious thing is his hip position. His hips are really pushed out like that. So this here, which looks like a pelvis, is his hip control. So I'm going to push it like that. And one of the things that happens when your leg is straight is often the hip pushes forward. And if I go like this to the top view, I can rotate it a little bit like that too. So it's kind of forward too. I'm going to click his arm here, and I'm going to pull his arm down. Now remember I said that before, that is, if you look at this picture, you see that his arm is back. It's not just straight down. It's further back towards his butt. So I'm going to press Control 3 to kind of get back, to the side view. I'm going to pull it like that by pressing G. And remember we said hopefully you've done those exercises before. You realize that moving an arm is G to move the arm and R to rotate the hand. So I'm putting it kind of back here. Another reason is it looks better. If one of his arms is further back and the other arm is further forward, the position looks more dynamic, looks more like a good pose. Okay, even more actually. I'm seeing it from the side there. I could probably pull it back even more. And his hand's kind of a bit back. All right, and it's a little closer to his body. Now this one obviously is pulled up, and I pull it up, and then I have to rotate it up like that. And if I go to the side, I'm going to pull it a little bit forward, just so it's kind of contrast with his other hand, and it looks a bit better like that. Posing is a lot about contrast. When one limb does something, the other limb often does the opposite thing. That's just what happens with our bodies, because we have to be balanced. Otherwise, we'll fall over. Okay, so let's look at this so far. I think the body, the hips could be even more tilted, because I want it to be like a little bit exaggerated. It's a ridiculous looking monster. It's not supposed to be realistic here. And I took the main body control here, and I just pushed it down slightly. Okay, so now that this is probably okay, but now I have to do something with his head. Like posing is a lot like modeling or sculpting. We have to look carefully at the thing that we're actually posing. So if I look at this guy here and this guy here, this guy looks more stretched out. That's because his head is pulled up further. This isn't like a realistic guy. It's a stupid looking monster. So it's not like a realistic thing. This whole thing is kind of a soft, mushy bag. So we can pull his head up. We can squash and stretch him because he's a stupid monster. All right, so wait a second. The problem is I have no head control because I hit it. How do I get the head control back? Hopefully you did your exercises. Alt-H, you see everything now. So I'm going to just now select the selection sets for the head controls. Okay. And I'm going to take, and also hopefully you remember that this circle here is the main head control. I'm going to pull him up a little bit. There, now it's better. Now he's more stretched out. Okay, if we rotate the head on the x-axis, it moves back and forward like that, like he's nodding. If I rotate on the z-axis, it's like that. And if I rotate on the y, it's like that. So let's undo all this stuff. His head was rotated a bit like that already. And like I said, I'm going to pull it back a little bit so it's a little bit more up. Okay. Something kind of like that. And the last thing, his shoulders here, I'm going to rotate a little bit like that. And then I just noticed the head needs to be slightly more rotated like that. Okay, and I'll move this is his eyelids. I'm going to move him down a little bit. All right. So I'll select everything and keyframe it. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do Alt-H, I'm going to select the whole puppet, and I'm going to keyframe it. So now I actually have a frame. And it's not bad. All right, so that's basically my first position. I might tweak it after, but for now, it's my first position. So let's go look at the next thing. Now we switch to the other side, and it's exactly the same pose, but it's flipped. So, of course, the easiest way to do this is we're literally just going to copy the actual keyframe. Remember, if we want to copy and paste keyframes, I have to see all the bones that I'm actually moving. So that's why I unhid all the bones, and I pressed A. So this now, here, this keyframe represents the whole thing. So I'm going to copy this keyframe, hole here. Oh, I'm going to click this off. The reason this was clicked on, it didn't matter in this case, but this is for only show selected. I just really want to make sure that I'm selecting all the bones. So I copy this, Control C, then I go to 1 second later, which is frame 25, and I Control V and I paste it. And you see that the two keyframes have like a kind of a beam in the middle. That means that they're exactly the same, because these two are exactly the same. The reason why I copied them is because I want to make a loop for now. I want to loop just this action. So the beginning and the end are the same, and then exactly halfway in the middle, which is frame 13, right? 1 plus 12 is the opposite motion. So since I copied it, I can go Shift Control V, and that will flip the pose. And if I do this on the timeline here, it flips it and it applies a keyframe. So I want to show you this again because it's something you can be doing all the time. Remember that I have copied my basic pose. And I go to the frame that I want the flip version. There are two ways of doing this. One is I stay here where the timeline is, or the dope sheet, and I press Shift Control V. That flips it and pastes it. The other way of doing it is if I actually go here in the viewport and I do Shift Control V, that copies it and flips it, but it does not paste it yet. Notice there's no actual keyframe here. There I would have to do this. So if you are doing the flipping here in the viewport, you actually have to set the keyframe. If you do it here, it's automatically set. So now it's the same. We're good. Let's go look at our loop. So we have this. And because it ends on frame 25, I'm going to set my loop to frame 24 just so I can watch this motion repeatedly. So it looks like he's swimming or something like that. Okay, let's say you want to actually change the hand position right now. You've already done like a basic cycle here, but you kind of see you want to have some improvements. So, which is of course going to happen constantly. You look at it and you want to redo parts of it. So first thing is I want to show you something about this arm in particular. Notice that, okay, he's this very silly looking monster and it doesn't look realistic at all. And I want to be able to sort of stretch out the arms more because it just looks more ridiculous. Now, I've selected this controller here. I'm going to press N. And you have all this menu here. And if you go to item, make sure you're at item, you actually have a lot of information about the particular bones. One of them is called IK stretch. IK stretch means how much this hand is going to be able to stretch the arm. If I put this down all the way, you see that it doesn't stretch at all. Like it's like a normal, real person's arm. If I put this up all the way, I can stretch this thing infinitely, and he's like Elastic Man, like from The Incredibles or something like that. Now, in this case, I probably want him to stretch a little bit because he is sort of a silly cartoon monster guy. So I'm going to maybe have it something like that. Let me try it now. And that means I can stretch his arm up past what it would really be able to do anatomically. But it's funny because he's a monster. So I kept it at 0.25. All right, stretch it like that. And now that I've kind of re-stretched it, I'm going to press I. And now I've overrid my previous position. Now that I've done that, though, my last frame, which is a duplicate, is not the same. His arm suddenly is going to go less long. So I want to be sure that I have the last frame be exactly the same. And this is the thing. When you're redoing moves on a cycle, when you're changing the poses, you have to be sure to update all the duplicates and the flipped ones so that they actually look the same. So right now, the easiest thing is this is selected. I'm just going to press Control C, which copies the position of his arm. I'm going to go over to the last frame, which you see now the arm's not long enough, and I just press Control V, and now it puts it in the position, and I might press I. So I have now fixed the last keyframe so that they're the same. Now, the other problem is that the middle position, his arm's not stretched enough. So let's first of all click this arm and let's see what's happening with the stretching. Okay, it's stretching at 250, which is fine. But you notice something. This is yellow. Yellow means that somehow there have been keyframes. There's animation of this stretching part. I kind of don't want there to be any animation with the stretching part. I just want this to be set. So I'm actually going to, because you can animate even the stretch, I'm going to right click it. I'm going to write clear keyframes. Now there's no more animation for the IK stretch, and whatever it is just going to stay there. So it's at 0.250, great. Now that I've done that, and I'm on the arm, I can press Shift Control V. Remember the flipped pose, and press I. And now I have both my arms updated. So now his arms are ridiculously long when he does his little dance. Schlack, 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 schlack. Okay, so the next thing we have to worry about, now that we have our keyframes, is the in-between. And the essential in-between is called the breakdown pose. So first of all, I'm going to show you something kind of interesting and useful to do. We have our key poses, right? And by default, Blender will do the interpolation between the poses. So it has this kind of weird swimming look. However, what we can do is we can select everything. So I'm going to go to Alt-H, select everything, select all the keyframes. So now that everything's selected, we press T, and we have all those different interpolation. Remember that Bezier over here gives like a curve that we've been using before. So that's what it is by default. It gives this kind of thing. First of all, we want to be able to see if our keyframes themselves, without any in-between, are good. So the easiest way to do this, press T and put it on constant. And constant, hopefully you remember, is what gives that kind of stop motion robotic look. Let's do it. It's useful to do that is because now we're literally just seeing the key poses. We're not seeing anything in between, and we can just check, do the key poses by themselves look good? This is called blocking out the animation, where we're just focusing on the key poses. So we've been working on the poses, and they're pretty good. Let's just say we accept them. Yeah, that's good. We like our key poses. Okay, obviously it's the same pose flip, but let's say we like that. That's good. All right, the next step, though, is to now figure out how do we get from this to this. It is a very big change in motion, right? He goes from here to here. And obviously we need to put something in between. Now, remember that the computer can interpolate between the different motions. Now that I like my key poses, I'm going to think about now the in-betweens. How do you get from one to the other? And this is what I talked about in the intro video, one of the basic principles of animation, which is called the breakdown pose. I'm going to press T now. I'm going to just put it to linear. Of course, it looks ridiculous and terrible, but that's okay because what it's giving us is the computer is creating an in-between. And actually, if I go exactly halfway between, so let's figure out, first of all, the math. How do you know which is exactly between two keyframes? Well, it's pretty easy. I start in frame 1. I end on frame 13. That's like one cycle. So 13 minus 1 is 12. And 12 divided by 2 is 6. And 1 plus 6 is 7. Now, of course, you get used to this because you do a lot of these kind of 1 second things, and you kind of memorize that halfway through 1 second would be frame 13. Halfway through frame 1 and 13 is frame 7. You get used to that. So we're now at frame 7, which is exactly in between. And look at the position that he has here. It looks like he's a dancing chicken. Now, what you need to do right now, and it's going to be weird and embarrassing, and your family's going to think you're strange, is you're going to pause this video, and you're going to go stand in front of a big mirror, and you're going to do the disco dance yourself. It's like the 1970s Staying Alive disco dance. And what you're going to try to notice is what happens in between. Try to stop yourself as you're about to flip. What does it look like when you're halfway through? Okay, pause the video, go do your disco dance, and try to analyze yourself. Okay, welcome back. I hope you had a good time disco dancing and analyzing your positions. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it back to linear here. We're going to see what the camera did. We're going to see what the computer did halfway through at frame 7. So this is what the computer did, because the computer doesn't understand what you want to do, so you have to tell it what to do. This is definitely not what you look like when you were halfway through the motion. Your arms aren't actually sticking out in an arc. Your hands aren't looking like a chicken. what's really happening is when you go from the bottom to the top, from this to this, your arm is bending and it's kind of staying close to your body. It doesn't stick out like that. Your arm does not go in an arc. Look at what I'm doing with this mouse. It doesn't really do that. It more goes close to your body and it bends and then it straightens out. So you don't have this weird chicken look. So what we have to do is actually fix the middle position. I'm going to go to frame, it's supposed to be frame 7. I'm going to go to frame 7. I'm going to select everything. And really what I have to just change is the arms. So I'm just going to select these two hand controllers. Shift and then select Shift H. So I hide everything else. And now I'm just going to worry about the arms. So first of all, let me just take these arms and let me move this down a little bit. And I'm going to go to the side view here like that. And I'm going to, now I'm going to push it closer to his body. So it's not sticking out so much. And I'm going to go forward and I'm going to rotate his hand a little bit forward. So it's not kind of sticking out straight like a dancing chicken. And I might even go to the side and sort of turn it down. And in fact, by the way, if you want to look at it close to the bone, you just press numpad period, like the same way you would be when you were sculpting. Rotate a little bit like that. That's probably way more like what you actually will do when your arm goes from down to up. And I'll put it a little bit more forward because remember his arm was back and it's going to go up. So it probably has to go a bit forward in the meantime. Okay, and now this one is pretty much the same thing. I can go down here, bring it closer to his body. Maybe it's a bit higher up because it started at the high position. I'll rotate it. I'll go to the top, make sure it's not sticking out for no reason. Maybe a bit more rotated on the Z. Rotating on the X does this, so I'm just going to kind of pull it back a little bit. Maybe a bit less. Okay, let's see what that looks like. And this one was kind of forward because he was pointing up. Okay, let's use that. I'm going to select all, and all in this case is really just the two hands, and I'm going to press I. Now, here's the problem. I only set a keyframe for these two hands. Let's just unhide everything and just press I again so that I select a keyframe for the entire body. So I'm now establishing that this is the middle position. 1. Now let's see what happens. Turn this off just to be sure. It goes like that, middle, and up. And it looks way less stupid now because his arms aren't sticking to the side like a chicken during his dance. And I think that's pretty good. So just to be sure, remember that I need now a middle frame. I need a breakdown pose halfway through this too. So first of all, let me copy this pose. Control C. I'm going to do it in the viewport here just for fun. Control C. Now I have to go to the frame in between frame 13 and 25. So again, from frame 13 to 25, it's 12 frames. So I need to divide that into, that's 6. 13 plus 6 is 19. And again, you're going to remember these things because you're going to do it so much. That's the proper midsection, the middle. That's the midpoint of the two actions. And now I've got a paste, but flipped. Shift, Control, V. And now I have the flip version of my intermediate pose, my breakdown pose. I. And now, if I mute this, I'm going to see what it looks like. Okay. So the positions look pretty good. So the middle position now, that breakdown position is much better than it was before. The next thing we're going to worry about is the timing. Now, by the timing, I don't mean the timing between the first and the second. That we know. We know it's a half a second between each key pose. What we're trying to think about it now is how does he transition from this to this? At this point, he's in the middle position in the middle of his movement. That means that it's going to be basically a smooth movement from here and gradually like that, like that, like that, like that. So you can see if we just play it that it's kind of a smooth movement. It looks very mechanical. But if we look at our reference, it does not look like that. It looks much snappier. Let's look at the guy as he's dancing. Back, 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 back. So frame 1 to 7, not much movement at all. He's more kind of, his hand is going forward. And all of a sudden, he moves quickly. So what this is going to look like is he's holding it in the bottom and then whoosh, it shoots to the top. But that's not what our guy is doing. Our guy is basically just gradually going from the bottom to the top. So his movement does not look snappy. It looks kind of slow. Kind of looks like he's swimming. See? So we're going to change this. Let's concentrate first on the motion between mid. I'll just turn this out a second. The mid thing and the raised. Basically halfway through to up. We want this to happen quickly. So if I take this keyframe and push it towards here, the movement is going to be faster. Let me take everything here, select everything, just to make sure. Now I want to have all the bones. And I'm literally just going to take this and push it. I'm going to push it to about frame 10, which gives me only 3 frames between these two. So this means once he gets to there, it's going to snap like that quickly. And you can even have hopefully a little hip pop. And I'll do exactly the same thing here to this one, and I'm going to push it so it's 3 frames before the end. The end is supposed to be 25, so I'm going to push it to there. So it should be 25 minus 3, which is 22. So these should now look the same distance. So now he's going to pop quickly to the next position. A little bit snappier. Now the next thing we got to do is it's too gradual, him going from here till here. He's not holding his initial position long enough. We want him to kind of hold this and then quickly snap up. But if you look at the frames here, we have initial position and then middle position, and there's a big space in between, which means it's going to kind of gradually go from here to here. We want it to be snappier. So the easiest way to do this, I think, is I'm going to go to frame 4, which is only a few frames after the beginning. He's almost in the same position, just a little bit different. Then I'm going to select everything, like I have here, and I'm going to actually press I, which records this position. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. 13 plus, I said this was 13 plus 3 is 16. Again, keyframe that. But now I'm going to move these keyframes. Am I going to move it towards the front, or am I going to move it towards this way? Well, I'm going to move it this way. And that way what will happen is I'm going to move to frame 7, and I want you to see what's going to happen. Now there are 6 frames of him barely moving at all. And then all of a sudden he starts to move quick. So what this is going to translate to is holding the pose and then snapping to the next one. I'm going to do the same thing here. This one here, I just have to make sure everything is selected. Very important. Everything is selected. Very good. I'm going to take this one and just move it to 19 because that's, yeah. This one, the math is, this is 1 and the next one's 7. So there's 6 frames that pass. This is 13. The next one's 19. 6 frames that pass. Let's see if this worked. Let's see if his motion is snappier. Yeah, much better. Now he's getting a good hip thrust. And this is all due to the timing, how close or far the frames are from each other. So please go and watch this part of the video again because it's extremely useful to be able to kind of do these little manipulations to make things snappier or smoother. In this case, I made it snappier. Again, frame 1 and frame 7 are very similar to each other. If they're very similar to each other, there's barely any movement. Frame 7 and 10 are very different from each other. That means it goes faster. Frame 10 and 12 and 13 are very different. That means it goes fast. If a whole bunch of frames are very similar, the action will be very slow. If a whole bunch of frames next to each other are very different, then the action will move faster. The more difference between the poses, the faster it will look. Okay, so now we have our snappiness. Okay, so now the basic disco dance action is pretty good. Okay. A couple things I have to do is that, remember that I had made a mistake and put my last frame at 24 and I pushed it to 25. That's right. But my end frame was actually at 25. So I'm just going to make my end frame at 24 so everything makes sense. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is, now we're going to do the butt shake groovy dance. That was the disco dance. Now part 2, the butt shake groovy dance. And I'm going to go to the action editor. And that was called Dance 1. I'm going to make sure this is saved, and I'm going to press this, which basically copies it. I could have just made a new one, but whatever. And I'm going to say dance 2. That's the butt shake dance. Okay, so I'm going to make a whole new dance. Now, first of all, I don't really want him to be in this position, so I'm just going to select everything and press Q to get him back, and I don't want any of this animation either. So I'm just going to make sure that this is all selected, and it's all selected, and I'm just going to press delete and get rid of those keyframes. So now I have basically a blank slate for the next part of the dance, the butt shake. So now we have a little bit of a problem, which we're going to fix, of course. We are at the beginning of a new action on frame 1, but this guy over here, the action doesn't start. So now we have a little bit of a problem, which we're going to fix very quickly. We are set on frame 1, like we're kind of at a blank slate here, to do this kind of butt shake dance, except for our reference footage, the butt shake only happens halfway through on frame, I think, 49. So it's pretty easy to fix. All we're going to do is start on frame 49 and end on frame, 49 plus 24 would be 73. So that's what we're actually going to do. And that'll just make it a lot easier because now our reference footage is at exactly the same place. So we're all good. So it's all synced up. Because our reference footage is actually is using the same timeline. So we're pretty much copying the reference footage in this case. It's kind of, because our reference footage here, this video, is using exactly the same frame rate and everything like that. So we can really just copy the reference footage. So, okay, great. We're at frame 49, which is where we want it to be. And now we have to get him into this pose. This is the beginning of the butt shake dance. So let's go watch the butt shake dance in our reference picture, and we'll see what's going on here. We'll analyze it a bit. Now, ignore his mouth, because remember I said his mouth is opening and closing at different times, but I'm just keeping only one cycle of it. So we're not going to look at his mouth. We're going to look at the basic motion of his body. So obviously he's going his hips are moving like before, but not as much as before. He's keeping his arms down, and his head is kind of back, like he's kind of just soaking in the vibes. And of course, his eyes are closed and stuff like that, and his mouth is opening. And his arms are kind of, like sort of bent. He's kind of just grooving like that. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning, and let's make our first initial pose here. And I'm going to switch to just the basic bones so that it's a bit easier, as usual. Okay, so let's start off, and usually we start off with this part here, the torso. And again, his hips are rotated, not as much as before, but like, a little bit like that. And then I'm going to take his body here, and I'm going to just move it down. And his whole body is kind of turned like that, like rotated. So I'm going to press RZ. That's how you rotate his body. Obviously not that much. And if I hold on to Shift, it controls it, so it's not so much. RZ. Try to kind of match it slightly. Okay, and you can see also that his whole body is kind of back. So I'm going to, again, just rotate this like this also. You have to look very carefully at pictures and reference to kind of try to figure out what angle things are at, because obviously this is only one angle. You have to kind of really use some detective work to figure it out, and then try it and then see if it matches. Okay, and I'm going to move his arms now. So this arm here is obviously it's rotated in a different way. So I'm going to sorry about that. Rotate this arm here a little bit. A bit more, and then it's kind of closer to his body. And if I go to the top, I can rotate it like in more, even more. Obviously, I don't have to copy this exactly, but I'm just, it's a good thing. It's a good practice to try to copy it exactly, because you're learning each time you do that. Okay, and then this one here is more near his knee, and it's sort of rotated a bit more like that. And we're going to check again the angles of stuff to make sure it kind of looks nice. So his hand is there, his shoulder is there, his hand's a little below his shoulder. And we're going to fix his shoulder in a second. And then, all right, let us look at his head now. So I'm going to do Alt-H to get all the bones, click off again, and then just select his head. So his head is turned in a couple of different ways. It's turned a little bit more towards that side. So that's the Z axis, RZ. A bit more like that. And it's also very obviously back. And it's even like this a little bit. And it's even more back because you can see his upper lip here is pretty high up, which means his head is back. A bit more turning. And you can look at things like, look at his horns, the angle of his horns and stuff like that. Maybe even a bit more back. Let's try that. Okay. Let me just close his eyes since his eyes are obviously closed. Okay. And let me open his mouth up. Well, I'll keep his mouth for now. I will be doing the mouth after. Okay. And his shoulders. Let's see his shoulders. His shoulders do anything? Not too much. I'm going to move his mouth just to see how it looks. I think his whole body is still a little bit more back. And this is his smile. So I'm going to move this up because he's smiling. At this point, he's very happy in life. Okay, so it's pretty close. I'm going to unhide everything, and I'm going to just get the basic. In fact, I'm just going to collect this, the box in the middle. And again, I'm going to turn him back a little bit, even a little bit more. Okay, that's probably pretty good. Okay, now I want to select everything and select. Now I want to select all the bones and make a keyframe. So Alt-H, have all the bones there, do that, and then I. Remember, when I'm posing him, I'm kind of hiding some of the bones so I can sort of see what I'm doing. But then I usually set a keyframe for everything at the beginning of the action so that everything's been taken care of. And then I might, erase some of it after, but at least I have everything. Okay, so let's see what that looks like. Okay, let's go with that for now. So if everything's good now, we can try to copy and flip the pose. So I'm going to do Control C. And let's just for fun do this on the viewport. Control C. Now I have to go to 1/2 a second later, which would be 12 frames. So 49 plus 12 is 61. And if everything is right in this reference footage, it's exactly the opposite. And it is right. Shift Control V and set a keyframe because I'm on viewport. I have to press I if I'm on viewport. And now I want to do the original key. Remember, it's making a loop, so the last one has to be identical to the first. So since I already have it copied anyway, remember I get Control C, I can just go right to the end, which is 73, Control V, which is the original one, and I. So now I should have him basically going back and forth. Let us see if it works. 49 to 73. And so since it's ending on 73, and that 73 is identical to the first, I ended on 72 because 73 is exactly the same as the first, and it will do a double frame if I don't change that. Let's see it. Okay. So the basic motion is okay, but we're noticing there's a little bit of a bounce going on with this guy. Let's compare these two. The thing that is missing, let's now just look very carefully at this guy. Remember, animation is basically movement analysis. So if I go to the middle of these two, right, 12 frames later, or sorry, 6 frames later, which would be 55, that's the middle pose. Let's look at his body position compared to the middle pose of this one. He's a little higher up. What's actually happening is he's doing a little bit of a bounce. Let's see the body here. And I think actually I need to make him a little bit lower in the beginning. Okay, so I'm going to turn the thing back on. Here, I'm going to make him even a little bit lower, GZ, and I'm going to take his head and move it a little bit higher so he's a little bit more stretched out, GZ. So what I did is I just stretched out his head a little bit and lowered his body so that there's less space on the floor. So now when he's going to go from this to that, he's going to go up and down like in an arc, and it'll be a bit more of like a bounce. So I pulled up his head and lowered him down. And remember that since I did those changes, I have to set this. So I have to make sure, like I'll just highlight everything and then press I. And then since it's exactly the same at the end, I got to do the whole thing. I just got to Control C, go to the end here, paste it with the changes. And then I got to go to the flip one. Go over there. Oh, where are we? Go to the viewport here, Shift Control V, and paste it. If I make a correction on the first keyframe, I have to then make sure that the rest of them have the same correction. Okay, so now he's a little bit lower. So now what I'm going to do is, in this exactly halfway through, in this case, it's just going to be exactly halfway through at 55. So how did I get 55? There are 12 frames between the two sides. That's the first frame, and then the 12th frame is here. So that's 1 and then 13. In between the two is 6 frames, right? 12 divided by 2 is 6. So starting on frame 49, I go 6 frames later to get the exact middle, which is 49 plus 6, 55. And it's obviously, you see it's the middle because he's exactly symmetrical. Right here is where I'm going to take his body and just pull it up a bit. I took this whole box, GZ. And then I'm going to set that keyframe. And now I'm actually going to copy this. If I just do Control C here, I've copied the position of this box, and I'll stick right in the middle of these ones, I'll stick the box going up, the same exact position. So again, this is frame 61. I got to go 6 frames later, so that would be 67. And I do Control V, and I press I a bunch of times for some reason. So that raised his body. So now look what is happening with his body. As he's going to turn the other side, he's also going up and then back down. It's making a little arc. So his body is now making a nice little arc, and it kind of gives a little bit of a bounce. So let's again look at, I'll turn off this stuff. I want you to look at just his head, just this point. It's going to be doing something like this. Up, down, up, down. A little bit of an arc. So let's look through it. Gives a bit of a bounce that looks much better than just back and forth. And I might even exaggerate the bounce a little bit because I love the bounce. Put this back up. GZ, I'll even exaggerate a little bit. I. Then I'm going to go to this one. Oh, so let me go back. Since I like that position, I'll just copy it. Go back here, copy it there. And now we have even more of a bounce. Let's see. Okay. So now he has his little bounciness. Notice I haven't put any mouth movement or anything like that yet because I'm going to do that after I chain everything together. Okay. So that's that part. But now we have to get the part at the end when he actually jumps. And I'm going to just keep that on this one. So let's see the whole action. I'm going to set the end frame to 96 so I can actually just look at the actual footage. So this is like the second half. He starts off, and let's look carefully. 1, 2, 3, boom. 1, 2, 3, yum. 1, 2, 3, yep. 1, 2, 3, yep. So what he's doing, and let's do it now slowly. He's on that side, and he goes 1. Let's call this 1. 1, 2, 3, jump. So now we have his little groovy dance there. We have one loop of it. And now we're going to do the rest of this action. And so remember that he goes, let's go back to here. Turn this off here. He's to his right, and he goes 1. Then he goes 2. And then he goes again 3. And then he jumps. So far we just have the 1 and the 2. 1, 2. So for the third one, it's exactly identical. I'm just going to copy and paste these keyframes. And I'm going to make sure, of course, that everything is selected because I want to copy the whole body. So let me just select these, copy, put my cursor in the right place. V. So now he should have, so 1, 2, 3, and now he's going to prepare for the jump. And you see that on that last one, he's already getting lower. And then the fourth one is going to be him jumping. So let's do this jump right now. So on that, when he gets down to the ground here, so this part's pretty much the same. That part's the same. But now when he gets down, he is going lower. And this is a very, very important animation principle. Let us watch the little jump here. So he's there, and when he goes down and then he jumps. And it's, of course, it's a ridiculous looking puppet. It's bending, it's all, cruddy and stuff like that. Of course, it looks ridiculous and he looks like a silly puppet, but the whole idea is that before you jump, you do a squat and then you jump. Nobody just jumps straight up from straight legs. When you jump, you have what's called an anticipation, where you kind of compress and then jump like a spring. And everybody does that. That's how things jump. Look at a dog or a squirrel or anything like that. So, or us. So before he's going to jump, he has to kind of squat down and compress, like a squash and stretch thing. So we're going to kind of get this anticipated part here. So now he gets down there, and now he's going to get down and get prepared for this jump, like he is here. So I'm going to turn this on, and really, it's really going to be mostly his torso that changes. So first of all, let's look at his head. His head is actually not rotated that much anymore. So I'm going to, I'm going to go RX. And I'm going to turn it a little bit like that. And now I'm going to select his body, and I'm going to go even more down, GZ. And really crunch him up there. His hands, I didn't really change very much. And I'll go even a bit more down like that. And now that's probably okay. I'm just going to select everything and press I. And now we have to figure out where the highest point of the jump is. The keyframe we want to set next should be the highest point of the jump, kind of like when you did the bouncing ball. This is the lowest point of the jump, and we have to find the highest point. So I'm going to go up here. Oh, that's the highest point right there on frame 90. So that's the highest point that he jumped. Okay, so let's figure this out. First of all, I can see that his eyes are open. So I'm just going to open up his eyes. And I'm going to, clearly this thing has to go up, GZ. And he's actually literally off the ground. It looks so silly, but whatever. It's supposed to be silly. And his hand is a little bit up because I guess he's preparing to go to his disco stance. And his whole body is even a little bit more turned, actually. Rotate Z. Something like that. Now, it doesn't have to be exactly like this, but I'm just kind of looking anyway. Okay, I'm going to select this whole thing, and I'm going to press I. Okay. And now what happens? Now he's down already. So the actual jump off the ground, he left the ground there, basically on frame about 87. It took him only 3 frames to jump up. Now here's your quiz. If it only took 3 frames to get from here to the highest point, is this fast or slow? It is fast because it's only 3 frames to do a lot of motion. And it's probably going to take him 3 frames to get back down. 1, 2, 3. Now he's back on the ground and his feet are both planted. So I'll put him back on the ground here. I'll just go GZ because I know he's going straight up. Okay, and I'll sort of push him down like that a little bit. And his body is now no longer rotated. In fact, I'm going to select this thing and just press Q because I want it to be sort of no more rotation. And in fact, what I can see is, look at his body position. This body position looks very, very similar to the original disco dancing position. And in fact, it's going to have to be exactly like the original disco dancing position because in the very last frame, he is in the disco position. So I can't just make something up now because it's not going to work. He's going to end up being basically out of sync. So what I'm going to do now, right now, before anything, is I'm going to actually copy and paste all of this stuff into a brand new action, which is going to have both the disco dancing and this. So I'm going to finish this after. So I know he's in midair, but I'm going to bring him back down once I paste this stuff together. All right. So first of all, let me actually make sure this is being saved, and then press this again, a new action, and this is going to be called Dance Full Video. And what this is going to have is the whole thing. So in fact, since I already copied it, it already has all my animation for that part. What I need to do is find the original disco dancing and paste it at the beginning. Okay, let me go find Dance 1. Just make sure this is it. Now, of course, nothing's going to happen because I'm on the wrong frame. Let me start at frame 1, and there. Let's go see what happens there. All right, so remember that I only made a very quick loop. But that's okay, because I'm going to just copy and paste this after. So let's make sure everything is selected there. Let's make sure everything is selected here. I'm going to copy this, Control-C. Then I'm going to go back to my Dance Full Video, and I'm going to paste this just right there. There we go. I just literally copied and pasted that. So now I have one repetition of the disco dance. One. And then I have nothing. And then I have the groove. So I got to do another copy of this disco dance. So I already have it there. It's already copied. I'm just going to press Control-C again just to be sure. Go to frame 25 and paste that second repetition. So now if everything works well, he's going to do his 2 disco dances. Then he's going to do the groove. And then he's going to jump up in the air and it's going to end abruptly. He's going to probably, something weird's going to happen. Let's see. Yep, that's what I thought. So, first thing we got to do is actually get the final keyframe here. Because remember, he has to repeat this action. So the very first part of the action is this disco dance pose. Copy that one, and I'm just going to copy it in the timeline. Go to the end. And paste it. So now he is jumping up and then landing. Now, it's almost there, but it looks a little strange. Because look at his weird change here. Up, and then suddenly his kind of hips sink and he kind of goes from up in the air to suddenly like standing like that. That doesn't make any sense. All right, now I want you to pause this video. Yes, you. Pause the video, jump up, and land. And you'll notice that very likely when you land on the ground, your body compresses a little bit. It kind of squats in a little bit. So we need to kind of have him squash a little bit once he lands. So he should land like that, and then instead of just magically doing that, he should get a little bit of a compression. Not just like that. That's weird. So when he hits the ground now, he should be a little bit squatted. So I'm just going to choose this box, just literally the cube thing, and then just go GZ. Squash him down a little bit. And then he's going to raise back up. So let's see. He lands. I'll do it just like this. He lands, he squashes, and then he gets back into his position. Let's see how that looks. It's a little bit better. Let's watch it. And now the last thing to do is just to add some blinks and his mouth. So I'm going to go back up, unhide everything, and then just select the blink and the mouth and just Shift H those so I can just add some blinks. Okay, so he starts off, and first of all, let us see the actual keyframes here. I'm going to just click the blinks. This here is showing only the blink. Now, why do I have all these keyframes? It's completely unnecessary. This is only the blinks, and because every single time I set a keyframe, all the bones were chosen, I have kind of unnecessary stuff. So I'm actually going to clear this out. I'm actually going to clear this out. I'm going to select A, and here's something kind of interesting. If I press X and I write clean keyframes, just with that channel, I clean up all the duplicates. That is unbelievably useful because now I only have the changes. So now what's going to happen is that he starts off with his eyes open. They stay open, and now he closes them during his little groovy dance. Then they're going to, this is the second frame where they're still closed. So between here and here, since they're closed, this is identical. They stay closed. And now they're going to open back up again. So I've cleaned out all the unnecessary keyframes. That's very useful, and that's what you should do when you select a bone and you have all this unnecessary stuff. Once again, I'll just do that entire operation again. It was very easy to do. I select the bone. I make sure that this only show selected is on, because that means it's just the blinks. I select everything by pressing it, and if I just press X, it gives me the option to delete the keyframes, which is obviously not what we want, because we don't want to cut them all out, but we want to clean the keyframes. And that will allow me to basically just clean out any duplicates so I can actually have a much more better idea of what's really moving. Okay, so now let's say I want to make a blink here. Let's figure out when I could want him to blink. Maybe about there, about halfway through, something like that. So in order for him to blink, once again, I did in the last video, I'm going to set a keyframe right now to show that they are still open. Then I'm going to go maybe 3 later, close them. Then I'm going to go 3 later and open them again. And then they'll stay open there. And then he closes them. And now, the very last part, when he jumps up, it would be kind of funny if his eyes really go wide because he's jumping up. So I just made his eyes a bit wider. Now that means they have to go back to the original position, which they are. Okay, so let's see that. Okay, so and now his mouth. Let's go select his mouth now. And we have the same thing. We have a whole bunch of keyframes. Some of them are unnecessary. I'm going to put A, X, clean keyframes, and now I just have what is actually going on there. So here, his mouth is sort of at this weird level. Then it opens up. Now it's still open, and now it's going to close, and I guess I made it open up when he jumps. So actually, when he jumps, I'm going to make it really wide. Then it closes back. So let's say that while he's doing his little dance, I want his head to rotate a little bit at the beginning, here. Just to kind of look to the side a little bit, to give it a little bit of, break up the monotony a little bit, because he's kind of just looking straight ahead. It looks a little bit strange. So what if I wanted to kind of have his head turn slightly? Now, that seems like a pretty easy thing to do, right? I would just take this head controller. And turning left and right is just RZ. So you might think I could just, okay, let me just take this. I'll go to the frame that I want him to turn on. Let's say here, his arm's up. Maybe he's going to kind of look at his arm. And set a keyframe. But the problem is this. Look what happens. He just looks and his head immediately turns back. So I have kind of a weird fast motion. I didn't want his head to turn back immediately. I wanted to kind of stay there, maybe slowly go to the other side. But it went in 6 frames, return to the middle position. And I say, well, what's going on here? Why is it doing that? And if I just cut this out, I kind of lost some other rotation. Because the problem is that when I cut this out, I cut all the head motion out. But I actually just want to alter the rotation part. And this is where things get a little bit annoying, but you're going to have to do it sometimes. First thing is, open up the entire channels. And so we see that we just added a Z rotation, right? That's what we just added there. It was actually the Z rotation. How can I tell for sure if what I want to change is on this channel? Well, the way to do it is just tick this off. Now it won't do any rotation. So if I go back and I see it, and it doesn't do the thing that I just did, notice his head is not turning. That means it was this channel. Let me just be sure. I'll tick it on, and now his head should actually turn. Yes. So it was clearly stuff on this channel. Let me just look at this channel here. That stuff. So you notice there's a lot of stuff on this Z rotation channel, and I really didn't do much stuff, so I don't really know why it's there. So let's try, first of all, cleaning the channels. X, clean keyframes. Nothing much happened. So I might have to do this manually. At first, I have Z rotation there. So let me just first of all get rid of this one here. This is obvious. This is a second keyframe for no reason. It's not doing anything. Starts off there. Okay, now it goes there. But now it returns back because there's all this stuff that is of no use whatsoever. Now, his head does turn during the groove part. I need it there because his head's actually moving back and forth. This is cool. I need it there. But I don't need any of this stuff. This is just his head being motionless. Now that I cut that out, let's see what happens. His head turned like we did it, but it didn't immediately turn back. In fact, it stayed there and it slowly, gradually turned back till here. So that might be okay. Or I might say, well, now that I cleaned it, let me have him look maybe to the other side. Let me just have him go sort of back to his normal position. RZ, I'll kind of have him go back there. And set that. That's pretty good. I might want to say that maybe he is even, once his head goes back. Maybe here, I can have it rotate to the other side a little bit. Just a little bit. All right, let's see how that looked. That part was a little too mechanical. That slow turn is weird. No one would ever turn their head like that. So I'm going to take this keyframe and just move it a little bit like that. Let's see what that looks like. That's better. Just to be sure that everything's cool, I'm just going to select all this stuff and go T and just choose Bezier so that the actions have a little bit more flow to them. And the last thing is I notice my turn here, it's too much of a turn. I don't want to have to turn that much, just subtle. Let's try that. And even that's too fast. He should turn once his finger gets there, not before. Let's try that. That's better. Okay, so what I just did there is after his head is straight, instead of gradually turning like a robot, I duplicated the same keyframe, so now his head is straight and his head is still straight. It's called a hold. Then he turns quickly. So there's some slow, subtle movement like this. That's pretty slow. This is slow and subtle. This is a hold, and then all of a sudden he turns. So there's a combination of slow movement with faster. I think that looks pretty good. And it's now not totally repetitive. Great. All right. I like this. So there is our little animation. And now, of course, if you want to render it, you can go and put a floor in and stuff like that. So I can put this back in. I can render my scene. And I have a much better looking thing. Put your camera there and you can render it. Or you can send it to me to render it. All right, I hope this was an awesome lesson. Now go and actually animate this. You will learn a ton from doing this dance, an absolute ton. And then you can start doing your own dances based on what you learned. Thank you very much. Bye.